Welcome, kiddies. You are now listening to WBZA Radio Weird FM. And I am your beast of a host from the East Coast, the Sultan of Strange, Dr. Grim, broadcasting from my morgue studio, deep in the bowels of evil, New Jersey. Tonight we bring you a tantalizing tale, right from the pages of the Bizarchives, Issue 2. This is The Dunelord's Dreaming by M.S. Jones, read by Sam Carnes of the Savage Frontiers magazine, which you can get over at savagefrontiers.bigcartel.com. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time.
The Dunelord's Dreaming by M.S. Jones. We don't eat, we don't sleep, and we don't bleed, but we don't come cheap. I say, standing to my full height and puffing out my chest like a good soldier. I believe that it's important to make a professional impression, even if I am already dead. Many of the tavern's customers move away when they see a revenant among them. A few come closer to get a better look at the living dead man. It brings me no pride to know that I am now the subject of many of the whispered conversations in the tavern. Gold will not be a problem, the ochre-skinned merchant replies, looking me up and down and checking me out like a camel at market. He is dressed in rich silks and dripping in jewelry, so there is no doubt of his affluence. My master has gold, much gold, and he will have much more once we deliver our cargo safely to Terabane. That is why he wants you, my friend. He takes a step toward me and slaps me on the arm twice, rattling my armor and raising a cloud of dust which sets him coughing. 10,000 coins will buy you my full company for the duration of the voyage, I say, fixing him with my gaze, looking to cow him with my hideous visage and cut short the negotiations. My desiccated skin, the color of decay pulled taut over an almost visible skull, is not pleasant to look at up close, I am told. Unacceptable! He spits, clearly unimpressed by the stare of living death. That's almost a quarter of our profits. Better 3/4 of the profit of a full cargo than all the profit from none, I reason, and turn my back on him and walk towards the door. I know his type well. His master knows my price and is prepared to pay it. Otherwise we would not be having this conversation. He's just trying to hold out and get a cut for himself. My men and I are worth double that price, and he knows it too. The road through the desert is perilous, I remind him. There are sandwalkers, dust drakes, lightning hawks. Lots of dangers lie between here and the markets of Terabane. Never mind the sandstorms. But if you would rather employ someone else, there is an open market for caravan guards here in Lubbock. Be my guest. It is too much. My master. He comes running after me, as I knew he would. Your master sent you to find the best guards for your caravan, and you have. You have found me. Now, are you prepared to pay my price or not? 8,000. He is stone-faced in negotiation, but I am made of stone. 11. If that is too much, then go tell your master that I have heard that Symbol the Stranger's crew will be back to full strength in a couple of weeks, and he'll be looking for a contract. They lost only half of their number and most of their last cargo getting here. Or maybe you can form your own gang from the dregs in the taverns. There are plenty of men here who will be happy to take your coin, although I'm not sure how many of them will stand their ground to defend you against the sandwalkers when they come, nor how many will live to see the white towers of Terabane. But perhaps their price will be acceptable. My friend, I do not doubt your prowess, but 10,000 coins is too great a price, even for a renowned company such as yours. It's 11,000 now. Or have you forgotten the extra 1,000 for wasting my time? What do the dead need with so many coins? He throws out his arms in desperation and asks the sky. He doesn't need to know the answer. But we need it as much as any warm blood. The blood spice we crave does not come cheap. Take your time, I say. I'm sure Terrabane's winter will wait for your wool. Although I have heard that Terman Burke is leaving Ransel soon with his own cargo. Maybe the Terrabani won't have to wait for their undergarments while you waste your time wondering about things that don't concern you. Any caravan making it across the desert with goods from Lubbock's port would command a high price in Terrabane, but the first to arrive would always have a bonanza. You are truly a heartless devil, Captain. 9,000, and I'm slitting my own throat. 12, and I'll be happy to slit it for you. My gray-lipped grin leaves my intentions ambiguous. The space saved on your camels' backs by not having to bring food and drink for my men will more than make up for our cost. Any shrewd merchant would know that. It was true. 1 camel load of wine and metalwork from the Isles leaving from Lubbock would make enough profit for a modest man's lifetime in the markets of Terrabane. Investing that wisely in silks and spices could make 10 times that on the return journey. This man's bickering over the price of getting there safely to collect his treasures irritates me. I do not have the funds for 12,000. 10,000 is all my master provided. Then sell a camel or two. It's 12,000. Or you wait for a willing gang of warm bloods and you take your chances with them. Besides, you'll probably feel safer with your own kind. Everybody wins. Now, if you don't mind, I have a serious merchant to see about a contract to guard his caravan. If I come back here, the price will have risen to 15,000. Every one of the merchant caravans leaving Lubbock to go to Terrabane want me and my men to protect them, so we can afford to be choosy about our contracts. 10,000 is the minimum for the trip, but most are prepared to offer more to guarantee our services. We are the Bloodthirsters, the most notorious caravanserai on the Old Salt Road. We have never reneged on a contract, and never lost a cargo to the Sandwalkers yet. I say men in the loosest sense. We are all revenants, the living dead. Dust devils, some call us, or Sandwalkers if they are feeling less generous. We died, all of us, centuries ago, along with the empire that we served, Sarissa. May its name be cursed for 10,000 eternities as we are. What was once a fertile continent was turned into a dust bowl as the empire crumbled at the whim of the dark thaumaturgy of some forgotten gods. Sarissa may have fallen to dust, but many of its inhabitants fared even worse. Torn between the obligation of the enchanted bonds of servitude to their god-emperor and the eldritch magics that devastated the empire, death could not take them completely. Many were mindless creatures following the catastrophe, and they became the feral Sandwalkers, wandering the desert, attacking anyone they found. A few of us were lucky, or doubly cursed, and we retained some shards of intellect. We became revenants, denied the grave, and denied true life. Over the years we found others like ourselves, and found a common purpose and a common desire. The blood spice. Not only did Sarissa's collapse curse its inhabitants and damn the desert, it also left 2 civilizations stranded at its extremities. The Dragon Spine Mountains to the west, and the boiling sea to the east of the shattered peninsula, were all but impassable. And that made the desert road, the old salt road, the only viable trade route for any sizable cargo. As long as the rich have gold enough to indulge their frivolities, they will find a way to get what they want. And so a caravan route sprang up across the desert, to bring luxuries from one city to the other. Tough, unyielding, and already dead, we make ideal soldiers. Protecting the caravans became a way for us to earn the money required to pay for the blood spice. My men wait outside town. There's no need for them to pay the toll to enter the city. There's nothing they need in Lubbock. Only Terabane holds any desire for us. Black Raiden stands sentry. He's a statue clothed in the desert's colors. An unwary man might not see him standing there until he was almost upon him. The only movement's the fluttering of his ragged clothing in the wind, along with the tattered pennant on the end of his spear. His ebony eyes fix me as I pass, but he makes no challenge. There are currently 31 men in the company, all dead like me. We are not prejudiced, but the living cannot stand our company for long. Maybe it's the silence. Our mummified gray-black flesh has been desiccated beneath the sands, and then tanned to impregnable leather in the sun of the Syrizan desert. So it couldn't be the smell. Several of my men bear wounds that will never heal. Kelf has only one arm, but he can strap a shield to the remaining stump, and he wields his spear as well as any of the company, so we keep him. Kratha the Silent lost his jawbone and most of his face to a wolf pack over a century ago, but he was never a great talker. None of us are. All our talking is done. All our thinking is over. All our desires are fled, except for the blood spice. Our own special vice that can only be found in Terabane's flesh pots. That is why we work. So? Ranner, my lieutenant, asks, do we have a contract, or do we have to go back penniless? We have a contract. The fat fool will be here tomorrow for my mark, and we can head back. Good, I will tell the men. 3 weeks into the journey, and we are approaching the ruined caravanserai the merchants call Midway. So far we've been lucky, and we have seen little trouble on the road. The merchants are already whispering that we have taken their money for nothing, that the dangers of the desert were exaggerated, and that we have played them for fools. They should be thankful that their money has bought them so much peace. Our bows have kept the lightning birds at bay, and Crow-Eye, our best scout, spotted a giant sun scorpion's nest close to the road a couple of days ago, and we were able to avoid it. Maybe we should have roused it instead and slaughtered the ferocious beast under the merchants' noses to show the fools what their coin was buying. As sunset approaches, we traipse silently along what might once have been a major road, but which is now barely a track, through a ruined gateway into a scattered plain of ruins. Judging by the spread of the broken buildings, the Midway caravanserai was once a great city. The foundations of a broken bridge hang over a void where a river once ran. Unbidden, the picture of the place is a bustling port full of life, like Lubbock already weeks behind us, fills my mind. I imagine merchants selling fresh fish from their forgotten river, alongside robed merchants offering the luxurious commodities from both ends of the old salt road to a prosperous, happy citizenry. Then the wind blows a tumbleweed across my field of vision, which drags the memory with it. Whatever this place had been, it is now nothing but an empty shell. The river is long gone, and only one spring remains, which has to be unblocked anew by each caravan that visits. No warm blood would dare stay here to keep the place serviceable. The old city may have fallen into ruin, but its debris provides some shelter for the warm bloods. My men couldn't care less, but it is still a pleasing sight as it marks the halfway point of our journey to Terabane and the blood spice. The road south has taken us in a wide westerly arc to avoid the worst corruption of Sarissa, the capital of the fallen empire which still taints the desert. I can always feel it, the epicenter of the forgotten catastrophe calling to me. Tomorrow we will start heading southeast, away from its lure. Toman, get the spring ready for our guests. Yes, sir, he replies. The flag that normally marks the spring lies in the sand almost hidden. But the boy knows where to find it and starts digging. It is funny that I still think of him as a boy. He was one when he died. A drummer looking for excitement in the ranks, he says. Now he is several 100 years old, but frozen in a boy's frame. A storm is coming, I say to Ranner. I feel it on my skin, one of the few things I can still feel. The tents will be useless. Better to shelter in the ruins, I tell the merchants. Gather your beasts in the old town square. I point to a place where cracked marble flagstones are still visible beneath the sand, and the scrub grass in the walls remain high and sturdy in several places. The camels are restless and resent being moved. It might just be the storm, but their snorting and pissing are spreading their worry to the warm bloods. Help them secure the beasts, I shout to Kratha over the wind. He picks up several of the reins and pulls them together over his shoulder and drags the creatures to the chosen spot. Then he pulls downward, driving them to their knees. The merchants start unloading the camels and pile their precious goods in the center of the makeshift camp, eyeing us warily in the process. We do not steal, and we will not drink your spice wine in the night, Black Raiden says in reply to their worried glances. We are the bloodthirsters. That is enough. While they prepare the campfires for the night, I go to visit the stele one more time. I am always drawn to them when we camp in Midway. I stand in their long shadows and look up at their capitals, crossed at an incongruous angle close to the center of the ruins. Thrusting from the sand like leaping whales, frozen as they break the water, or saved mid-fall by some invisible power. Maybe they were once part of the facade of some monumental building, or columns from an aqueduct. I will never know. While their attitudes are curious, the most intriguing thing about them is the carvings that run around their bases. Someone has been engraving pictographs on their surfaces since before I can remember. The first lines are wind-worn and ancient, but still legible. The latest marks are freshly carved and could have been made yesterday. It is a puzzle to me, a rare distraction in a world where nothing intrigues me anymore. Sometimes the signs repeat, for line after line, or taper out at the end. Sometimes they are scratched out or written over. They must be the markings of some other company that crosses our path on the old salt road. But what do they represent? Do they tell a story, or give a warning in some forgotten tongue? Or are they just scribblings, a game devised by bored merchants to pass the time? Somehow the intricacy and the consistency of the designs insist to me that there is some meaning, some burgeoning message that I will never understand. The Sandwalker's sudden appearance breaks my reverie. They come one by one at first, stumbling out of the sand toward us. But there will be more. There are always more. I don't know how they sense us, but they always know when we are here. I go to stand at the edge of the camp and survey the desert beyond. The first one shambles past, ignoring me completely. I have nothing it craves. It seeks out the warm bloods huddled together in the center of the camp. My sword, Dry Fang, flashes twilight as it slices its head from its body, severing the chains of magic that kept it in this blighted existence, along with its spinal cord. Decapitation is the quickest way to kill them, but any blow that damages them sufficiently will eventually reduce them to innocuous pieces of shriveled flesh, although I have seen some dragging their tattered torsos across the sand using only their arms. The horizon is soon crowded with its kin. They are a storm we must weather with our shields and spears. Incoming! I hear Sergeant shouting from behind me, without my prompting. He is ever vigilant. Form up, you maggots! The men unsling their shields from their backs, huge sheltering circles bearing our sigil of a single drop of blood etched in black. They link up in practiced hands to form the scales of an impenetrable dragon that marches forward to meet the enemy. Despite the blinding sandstorm hampering us, we are more than a match for them. The first wave barely slows the advance of the shield wall, but they keep coming in wave after wave, skewering themselves on our spear points until the buildup of lifeless corpses begins to slow our advance. We are invincible, but we are few, and we cannot be everywhere at once. One gets around our cordon and heads for the warm bloods cowering in the camp. It falls on the first camel it comes across. The beast startles to its feet, bleeding and bucking in fear, but the sandwalker remains locked to its long neck, shaken like a rotten-limbed lamprey. The beast's mad cries and kicking risk stampeding the other camels, until leaves his place behind the line and puts it out of its misery with a swift stab of his trident to the throat, which rips the sandwalker in two on the backstroke. Prefers the trident for precisely this reason, but great strength is needed to avoid getting the weapon stuck in a fallen adversary's corpse. The camel's blood flows to the sand where it starts to bubble. Then a forest of skeletal arms thrust upward to grab the wounded beast. It disappears under the sand, but we are too busy to care about its plight. Sandwalkers are crawling out of the sand in the middle of the merchant's camp. "Form two horns!" I shout, realizing the danger. My men obey instinctively, splitting the shield wall into two columns of 12 men each, angled to funnel the mass of the enemy between them. I hate weakening my forces, but if we don't get to the camp, the merchants' lives are forfeit, and there will be no one left to pay our bill and clear our contract. I will not risk that blemish on our reputation. It would lower our market price. "Right horn, get here now," I shout. "Left horn, push those sacks of sand back into the desert where they belong." The men of the right horn formation run past me and reform in the square around the terrified merchants. They are doing little to protect themselves, even though most of them are better armed than we are. The camels will have to take care of themselves. The drill is perfected by centuries of practice, and the threat is dealt with efficiently. Our weakness is our low number, especially when fighting on two fronts, which is thankfully rare. The sandwalkers usually have no sense of tactics. However, these attacks seem almost coordinated, as if something is controlling them. A revenant like us? I wonder. Or a mad sliver of some lost god's mind risen from the desert? Then I see him. He stands behind the ranks on a low rise, in a sirocco of sand, pale, amber-yellow eyes glowing with a cold malevolence, appearing to direct the attack with his will alone. "Hold the line," I command, as I cut a path through the enemy out into the desert to confront him. He is like us in body, skeletal limbs moving beneath sun-damned skin, but while we dress as soldiers, the remnants of his clothing and the sheer number of gold bracelets, necklaces, anklets, and other jewelry that adorned his husk suggest that he was once a prince. What would he make of the spice, I wonder? Would he give up his jewels for it? "Brother, join us," I say in the hope that he understands me, but its only reply is a bestial snarl as it turns to face me. Despite how hard I look, I see no intelligence in its eyes. Maybe it was once like us, but its life with those beasts has reduced it to one of them. Like an alpha wolf, a sandwalker able to control the rest of the pack, but with no more volition than any of them. I realize with something akin to sadness that there will be no new recruit for the bloodthirsters today. It understands enough to recognize me as a threat, and it starts calling its thralls to it with a rasping cry. I see this as a tactical error, since it frees up half of my company to attack them from behind. I take that as another sign that it is nothing more than a feral creature prepared to do whatever it takes for it to survive. I, on the other hand, am ready to sacrifice myself if it will save my men. The creature doesn't know how to fight. It claws at me, snarling, but I beat it back with dry fang until it cowered before me, and I dispatch it just like any other mindless sandwalker by severing its skull from its spine. I let its remains, jewels and all, lie where they fall, a gift to the desert. I head back to the camp where the rest of my men are mopping up the last of the sandwalkers. I say nothing of the duel. I know that the merchants would be quick to pillage its corpse like a pack of fat ravens if they saw it. Will I become like that when I have forgotten everything? Should I feel some kinship to these shambling creatures? We are of the same stock, after all. They were killed and reborn beneath the sands, as was I. A waterless baptism for an unwanted second life. No, I insist to myself, we are different. We might have lost all we were before, but we have recovered some humanity. It is the wrong word, I know, but I cannot think of a better one. Back at camp, I see that we have lost a few camels and acquired a lot of piss-stained pants. Clean yourselves up before we leave, I advise. You smell worse than the camels, and don't do it in the spring. The next group to pass by here deserve clean water too. The worst of it is that some of the cargo has to be left behind. The craven merchants expend more time and energy calculating the most lucrative goods, pound for pound, and hiding the rest and drawing maps than they ever did trying to defend themselves from the sandwalkers. Our charges are much more vigilant and much more grateful on the second half of the journey. But once we cross a dry riverbed and come in sight of the white towers of Terabane shimmering like a mirage on the horizon, their talk changes. By the time we pass through the city gates, their whispers about how much they have lost in the caravanserai and how overpriced we are spoken boldly. The headman, however, recognizes our value and thanks me as he hands me a purse with the agreed sum, and we sign off the contract. The parchment is no longer of any interest to me, so I send Toman to nail it to the back of one of the wooden city gates, where honored contracts are displayed for the benefit of future clients. With our gains, I pay for the exclusive use of a hostelry for a week. The owner complains as usual, but takes our coin, double what he would have charged for living guests. We need peace to appreciate our reward for the journey without the company of warm bloods, so I pay it without question. The reward is fresh blood spice, red as rubies, and costing 10 times their price, but worth every single coin. Why does it command such a price? To begin with, it is the pollen from a flower that grows only in a few places high in the Grey Edge Mountains. It spoils almost immediately, and its properties cannot be preserved. Terabane is one of the few places where it can be delivered and consumed in time before its enchantments fade. And what does it do that merits such preparation? For the warm bloods, nothing. While you drink and smoke to dream forgetful dreams, we take the blood spice to remember. Our coins buy us our memories. We revenants came into our lives after death with no recollection of who or what we once were. Our bodies survived without traces of our former lives. Perhaps that is what drove the sandwalkers mad, who knows? Somehow, I do not waste my time trying to understand the how and why of it. The red spice gives us access to those memories. Its effects are infinite in experience, but limited in time. There is a stoicism to the company as I negotiate with the dealer, mainly because our frozen dead features can't show the desperation we feel. The price is irrelevant. We want all that he has. A draught of the precious spice always follows our passage. There will be no more here for many months. More than enough time for another return journey to earn the coin we need for the next batch. How many times have we done the journey? How many thousand miles have we walked back and forth under the sun for this brief respite? The cruel red spice. It lets us relive our memories, as if we were there, but then it makes us forget them as if they had never been. Once the landlord is gone and we are alone, I share out the spoils. There is no seniority in the men. They all get the same, a little more than a spoonful for each of them, and I keep the rest for myself, enough to fill a small cup. The men are happy with their share. It is enough for their needs, while I need larger and larger doses for what I want. While my men sniff their powder from their fingernails, I breathe in the aromas from the cup in front of me, like it was rich, red wine that the warm bloods drink, before pouring it down my dry throat in one swift gulp. As my comrades dance with forgotten wives or play with the memories of children long since turned to dust, all I want to do is remember how to die. The spice hits almost immediately. Once I am in its grasp, I have to push aside the silken embraces of the phantasms of my wives and my concubines, ignoring their allures and their entreaties to stay with them. I had been happy here in this imagined anteroom of memory for decades after I first discovered the spice, but now it is merely a distraction from what I need. I watch dozens of children, my children, crying as I turn my back on them, and onward through the infinite layers of the spice's effects. I know that I will find the illusion of contentment wherever I choose to rest, but that is not what I seek. I need to remember how to die. The Red Prince seeks me out, and his whirlpool presence spirals me back to another time and another place, which the spice makes real. I stand in a magnificent throne room of pink marble. My father sits on a silver throne in the center, surrounded by his 13 children. Princes and princesses link hands around him, my brothers and sisters. Seated on his dais, our father orders us to speak the words. We know that he is mad, but we know that we must obey him, whatever the cost. The crashing of the storms outside makes it clear that it is too late for reason. The enemy is at the gates. We never knew the full price until it was too late. We were invoking the catastrophe that would destroy Sarissa, not save it. We were responsible. I am responsible. This is the revelation I am doomed to experience anew for eternity, since I forget my guilt each time the effects of the spice wear off. One of my sister's spirits manifest in fingers of white silk says, "Come," in the ancient tongue, and drags me back through the sea of spice consciousness to another past. She stands next to me in a dusty library. A newly cracked grimoire lies on the table. This, where my father has found the words of desolation he thinks will end the war. And there is another spell, a spell of undoing for the curse. My living stomach churns as I realize that I can see the words of undoing. I can read the words that will end the curse. I frantically repeat them in whispers through my moist again lips as I commit them to memory. I know how to use them. I try to write down the words, but their incipient power consumes both parchment and quill as I scribe them. I know I must get to the city in the sands midway and carve the words into the temple's columns. I must complete the charm before I forget them again. Only sacred stone can hold their power. There is no time to wait for the men. I tell Ranner my intention. He seems to be the most lucid of the group. Speed is of the essence. The spice's effects will not last long. The little I have left will spoil long before I make it to Midway. I buy a camel with the last of our gold. The beast recoils from my undeath, but I will it into accepting me on its back. I insist that the guards open the gate for me, and we ride out into the sandstorm beyond the walls of Terabane. Some way through the journey, the camel dies under me. I have ridden it to death, but I am still days away from Midway. I leave its corpse to the sands and continue on foot, not stopping at all. My ghost siblings' encouragements are fading. The spice's effects are draining with each step I take towards my goal. I sniff the remaining scintilla of spice. It is less potent, but I hope that it is enough to rekindle the dreams until I arrive. Midway looms out of the desert. The temple columns stand like eager ghosts. My previous inscriptions glow in my spice vision. How long have I been trying? How many times have I forgotten? But it is almost complete. One more phrase, just a few more runes, and the spell of undoing will be complete, and I will die. I carve the final runes with the tip of my sword. I am eager, but the act requires precision, so I must take my time. Time I do not have. The fiery words become banal carvings as the spice betrays me once again. I am alone in the desert, with no memory of how I got here. The enigmatic runes of Midway once again capture my attention. The last few look to have been carved very recently, as if my arrival had scared off the carver before he had time to finish.